The storm arrived without ceremony, unleashing a torrent of rain that hammered against the cabin's tin roof. Inside, Liam clutched the handle of the insulated bag, the warmth of the chicken soup within a small comfort against the chill that had settled deep in his bones. He had barely stepped over the threshold when he saw them. Dr. Miles Reed was perched on the edge of the bed, his voice a low, soothing murmur directed at Caleb. By the hearth, Connor Shaw, home from his first year of college, was animatedly describing some city adventure. His slick words aimed to draw a smile from the pale figure lost in a nest of quilts. Liam's knuckles whitened. He set his jaw and cut through the cloying atmosphere with a voice louder than intended. He asked Caleb, a playful edge sharpening his tone, if he'd forgotten his promise to help bottle feed the newborn lambs. The air in the small room went still. The rain battering the window panes seemed to be the only sound in the world. Dr. Reed's and Connor's heads swiveled in his direction, their expressions a mixture of confusion and suspicion. A slow smile spread across Liam's face as he clarified, explaining that he was talking about the twin lambs born just that morning. The tension broke. Dr. Reed and Connor let out audible sighs of relief. Caleb, from his sickbed, shot Liam a look of mild exasperation. He was running a fever, he reminded them all softly. Liam's gaze was pointed when he agreed, confirming that yes, Caleb was indeed burning up. Caleb pressed his lips into a thin line and turned away. Liam shifted his attention to the other two men. He remarked on the late hour and the worsening storm, noting that the 2-mile trek back to the east side of Redwood Creek would be treacherous in the dark. Dr. Reed, ever the gentleman, took the hint. He stood, promising Caleb he would check on him tomorrow before taking his leave. As the door clicked shut behind the doctor, the room fell quiet again. Liam ignored Connor, who still lingered by the fireplace. He unpacked the steaming soup, the rich aroma of herbs and chicken filling the space. The broth glistened with golden fat as he poured a bowl for Caleb. Connor swallowed hard, his eyes fixed on the food. Liam then tipped the thermos back and drank the rest of the soup himself. He feigned surprise when he looked up at Connor, asking why he hadn't gone home yet. He relayed a fabricated message, claiming the town sheriff had been looking for him, something about his beat-up sedan blocking a fire hydrant, and that his father was threatening to get rid of his entire vintage video game collection if he didn't get home soon. Connor's face paled. He scrambled for the door, calling over his shoulder that he'd be back in a couple of days. Silence descended once more. Liam watched Caleb, a wry smile playing on his lips. Connor's father had only recently been appointed manager at the lumber mill, yet the boy had wasted no time in making his interest in Caleb known throughout the small town. Caleb avoided his gaze, murmuring that it was natural for people their age to gravitate toward one another in a town with so few young residents. Liam didn't respond. He sat at the small kitchen table while Caleb slowly finished the soup. When the bowl was empty, Liam collected it, rinsed it in the basin, and announced he was leaving. Caleb seemed surprised by his abrupt departure, managing only a quiet affirmation. Before closing the door behind him, Liam advised him to get some rest, mentioning that the thunder was likely to get worse through the night. He stepped into the deluge, the rain instantly plastering his hair to his forehead. He walked left, toward the main farmhouse, but only for about 20 yards. Then he circled back through the dripping pines to his own house. Inside, he shook the water from his jacket and lit a match. The flame bloomed, a warm yellow eye in the gloom. Holding a tall candle, he walked to the corner of his bedroom, the one whose wall faced Caleb's cabin just across the narrow, rushing creek. Through a small knot in the old wood paneling, a tiny aperture he had discovered years ago, he had a clear view. Caleb was propped up in bed, a thick book resting on his knees. As the night deepened outside, he finally set the book aside. He blew out 2 of the 3 oil lamps, leaving the room in a dim, flickering twilight. Then, his slender fingers found a loose floorboard beneath his bed. He lifted it and drew out a string of smooth, gray river stones, polished by countless years in the creek. Just then, a fierce gust of wind rattled the cabin, forcing its way through a crack in the window frame. The single candle flame on Caleb's nightstand danced wildly, its elongated shape trembling. In the wavering light, Caleb's expression grew hazy, his eyes unfocused with fever. Liam's jaw clenched. He fought the urge to storm across the creek and stuff the drafty crack with rags, to shield that fragile flame and the boy it illuminated. The weather was so cold, and Caleb was already burning from within. Suddenly, Caleb whispered a name, a low, yearning sound lost to the storm. But Liam saw the shape of it on his lips. For a moment, the world went blank. When his vision cleared, he was staring at the semi-congealed puddle of white wax on the back of his hand, a small, painless burn. He shook his head, a bitter laugh catching in his throat. At 5 the next morning, Liam was already at work, filling the water troughs from the well, the rhythmic squeak of the pump the only sound in the pre-dawn stillness. After feeding the chickens and the lambs, he went to the kitchen to make breakfast for Caleb. As he watched the flames lick the bottom of the cast-iron skillet, his mind drifted back 2 months. Caleb had been a boy from the city, his family's fortune built on some tech venture that had collapsed as quickly as it had risen. His grandfather, broken by the bankruptcy, had died soon after. Crores had seized everything, leaving Caleb with nothing. Liam's own mother, frail and bedridden at the time, remembered that Caleb's grandfather had once co-signed a crucial loan for Liam's late father, saving their family farm. Feeling a debt of honor, she had ordered her older son, Brandon, to marry Caleb. She had made Brandon promise to protect him, to shield him from the harsh realities he was unprepared for. After the quiet ceremony at the courthouse, Liam's mother had passed away, her conscience clear. But Liam knew his brother hadn't loved Caleb. Brandon's heart belonged to Julian Vance, the quiet, thoughtful English teacher at the county high school. In the month they were married, Brandon had never once shared Caleb's bed, instead making frequent trips to the next town over to see Julian. Then came the storm, the flash flood. Brandon, trying to get home on his motorcycle, was swept away by the raging creek. They found his body 3 days later. After that, the whispers started. The people in Redwood Creek, steeped in old superstitions, decided Caleb was a curse, a black widow who had brought death to their family. Some had even told Liam to his face that he should kick Caleb out before he was next. The sizzle of bacon grease pulled him from his thoughts. He plated the pancakes and crispy bacon and carried the tray over to the cabin. The smell of coffee and maple syrup roused Caleb, who emerged from his room yawning. His eyes widened at the sight of the hot breakfast, a shy, grateful smile spreading across his face. He thanked Liam, his voice soft, the name Liam drawn out in a way that sounded almost like a cat's contented purr. Liam kept his eyes downcast as he inquired about Caleb's health. Caleb, looking much better, said the soup had helped immensely. Liam nodded once, his expression hardening. He stated that even though his brother was gone, Caleb was still part of their family, for better or worse. He hoped Caleb would conduct himself with self-respect and not tarnish their name. Caleb's eyes flew open, a flicker of hurt and confusion in their depths. His voice trembled slightly as he asked what Liam meant. Liam's tone was glacial. He didn't want to find other men in his brother's house, he said. He asked if Caleb understood him. Caleb's hands clenched the fabric of his worn shirt. His long lashes fluttered against his cheeks, and his eyes glistened with unshed tears, making him look unbearably vulnerable. Liam's breath caught in his chest. He abruptly changed the subject, mentioning that the corn was ready for harvest. He told Caleb he would handle it over the next few days and that Caleb should just stay inside and rest. It was a clumsy peace offering, a slap followed by a sweet. It worked. Caleb, easily soothed, mumbled that he understood. The days after the storm were brilliant and hot. Liam worked in the fields, the sun beating down on his bare back. Patty, the town's most notorious busybody, saw him as she was passing by. Her eyes lit up. She declared it was high time he thought about settling down. Liam offered a polite smile and deftly shifted the conversation, asking what brought her to this side of town. Patty slapped her forehead, remembering her mission. She had been sent by Connor Shaw's father to bring the boy to meet the daughter of the foreman at the processing plant. With a hurried goodbye, she bustled off down the dirt road. Liam wiped the sweat from his brow with the towel slung over his shoulder. It was nearly noon. He stored his tools in the shed and walked toward the town's general store. The owner was shelling sunflower seeds and greeted him warmly. She handed him a small box, telling him that the item he'd special ordered had finally arrived. He examined the small, battery-operated fan in his palm. He smiled and paid her. The owner chattered on, questioning why he would buy such an expensive little gadget that barely stirred the air. Thinking of a certain delicate boy who wilted in the heat, Liam just smiled mysteriously and replied that someone he knew couldn't stand the sweltering summers. The owner started to offer some neighborly advice about spoiling people, but Liam cut her off with a polite farewell. He walked toward the community center, where a small, stuffy room served as the town library. After Brandon's death, the mayor had given Caleb the job of town librarian. The pay was next to nothing, but the work was light, and it gave him a place to be. Caleb seemed content with it, except for the oppressive heat of the unventilated room. As Liam reached for the door, he heard sounds of a playful scuffle from within. Connor was boasting that he'd brought a stack of new graphic novels from the city, demanding to be thanked properly. Caleb's breathless laughter followed. Liam shoved the door open. Connor was practically on top of Caleb, his hands gripping the slim waist where Caleb's t-shirt had ridden up, exposing a sliver of pale skin. They both froze, startled by his sudden entrance. Liam's lips curled into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. His voice was dangerously soft as he remarked that he wouldn't have bothered coming if he'd known Connor was already there. Connor scrambled to his feet, flustered. He reached into a cooler bag and offered Liam a cold compress, explaining he'd brought them for Caleb. Liam's smile became a tight, humorless line. He knew what they were for. Connor, oblivious, handed the whole bag of them to Caleb. He then asked if Liam wanted one. Liam's gaze flickered to Caleb before he answered, his voice flat. He said he didn't need one. After all, it was just him, toiling under the midday sun for days on end to bring in the harvest for Caleb. Connor looked surprised, asking if he wasn't worried about heatstroke. Out of the corner of his eye, Liam saw Caleb's expression fill with guilt. Liam gave a humorless laugh, wondering aloud what would happen if he just dropped dead in the fields. Caleb would probably have to be the one to drag his body home. Caleb's face went white, his lips pressing into an angry line. Before he could retort, a formidable voice boomed from the doorway. Patty burst in, grabbing Connor by the arm and declaring she'd finally found him. Connor, bewildered, tried to resist, but Patty was insistent. Liam helpfully explained to the confused boy that his father had arranged a match for him with the foreman's daughter, a real local beauty. Connor looked desperately at Caleb, shaking his head and insisting he didn't know anything about it and wouldn't go. Liam scoffed, pointing out that they were a perfect match and the arrangement was practically a sure thing. Patty, thinking Liam was on her side, beamed at him, promising to find him a nice girl next. Liam demurred with a self-deprecating smile, saying he had no car and no money and wouldn't want to drag a good woman down. Patty patted his arm, telling him a face like his was more than enough, before dragging the protesting Connor out of the library. The room was quiet again. Liam turned to speak to Caleb, but found him staring straight ahead, his jaw set, radiating displeasure. Liam assumed he was angry about the interruption of his fun with Connor. He sighed and reached for Caleb's wrist, but Caleb snatched his hand away as if burned. The unexpected rejection left Liam standing there, his hand empty, a cold knot forming in his stomach. He didn't understand. Why was Caleb the one who was angry? Caleb refused to speak to him. For 2 days, Liam tried to find a moment to ask what was wrong, but Caleb avoided him at every turn. Then came the town's Founders' Day festival. Every year, they held a celebration in the town square. But this year, the mayor had secured a sponsor and a massive inflatable screen for an outdoor movie night. All the able-bodied men, Liam included, were tasked with setting up. He saw Caleb sitting quietly on a folding chair off to the side. Liam approached and offered him a bag of homemade caramel corn. He asked softly if Caleb was still mad at him after 2 days of silence. Caleb, perched on a cushion Liam had sewn for him, kept his face averted and insisted he wasn't angry. It was the first time he'd spoken to him. A smile bloomed on Liam's face, genuine and relieved. He told Caleb to enjoy the movie and stay put, then went back to help with the final preparations. A classic comedy began to play. The crowd roared with laughter, but Liam's attention was fixed on the back of Caleb's head, a familiar shape that filled him with a quiet, aching affection. Halfway through the film, during a brief intermission, Liam picked up his stool to go join Caleb. But another figure cut through his line of sight. Dr. Reed was speaking to Caleb, his posture intimate and low. A moment later, they disappeared into the shadowy grove of trees bordering the park. Liam's hands clenched into fists. He followed them, his heart pounding a frantic, jealous rhythm. The moon was a hazy blur in the sky. He watched the two silhouettes, one tall, one slight, draw closer together. He strained to hear their words. Dr. Reed was telling Caleb that he would be leaving for a big city soon to start a new practice. He asked Caleb to come with him. Caleb seemed taken aback, stammering that it wouldn't be right. Dr. Reed gently interrupted, reminding him that his husband was gone. He told Caleb he was too young and had his whole life ahead of him, questioning if he really wanted to remain a widower forever in this small town. He spoke of his savings, of buying a house and a car in the city, promising Caleb a life free from hardship. He urged him to leave with him in a week. Faced with such a tempting offer, Caleb fell silent. Liam bit down on his own tongue to keep from rushing out and beating the man senseless. He forced himself to stay hidden, to wait, his eyes glued to the two figures. Finally, under Dr. Reed's expectant gaze, Caleb opened his mouth to speak. Liam saw his lips form the beginning of what looked like an agreement. Liam's mind went white. On pure instinct, he scooped up a small stone and flung it, hitting the trunk of a tree just a few feet from them. The sharp crack echoed in the quiet night. Dr. Reed, ever cautious, spun around, calling out into the darkness. A few minutes later, Caleb and the doctor returned to the screening area. Liam was back in his seat in the last row, staring blankly at the movie screen. In his peripheral vision, he could feel Caleb glancing his way. He scoffed internally. So, he was planning to run off with another man, and now he had the nerve to check on Liam's reaction. The rest of the movie was a blur, his mind consumed by a torrent of memories. He remembered the first day he saw Caleb. Liam had just graduated from college and had come home for the summer upon hearing his brother was getting married. He'd been walking along the creek when he saw him. The boy was so fair, his face delicate, like a flower that had no business growing in their dusty town. He had looked up and offered Liam a sweet, shy smile that had completely disarmed him. He had been so flustered he'd forgotten to even ask his name. When he'd gotten home, dazed and determined to find out who the beautiful stranger was, his mother had led Caleb out by the hand and announced, "Liam, this is your sister-in-law. Your brother isn't the most educated man. You'll have to help look after him." In that instant, it felt as though the ground had fallen out from under him. After his mother and brother were gone, it was just him and Caleb. Caleb, who had been raised in luxury, was utterly helpless. Liam knew that if he left, Caleb might not even survive. So he had stayed, willingly taking on the role of caretaker. He cooked, he cleaned, he farmed, he gave Caleb the very best of everything he had. And through the shared days and quiet evenings, his feelings had grown into something deep and unmentionable. He was sure Caleb knew. Caleb was perceptive, he had to know. He simply pretended not to, accepting all of Liam's quiet devotion while waiting for his ticket out. When the movie ended, Liam walked straight home, not waiting for Caleb as he usually did. After a quick, cold shower, he stood in the yard, waiting. He heard the door to the cabin open and close, followed by the faint sound of running water. With practiced ease, he vaulted the low stone wall that separated the properties. The small, rustic shower stall was tacked onto the back of the cabin. He approached silently, holding his breath. The sound of splashing water stopped, replaced by the soft friction of fabric. The moment Caleb stepped out, Liam moved. He clamped a hand over Caleb's mouth and dragged him into the deep shadows of the surrounding woods. Caleb's eyes were wide with shock. He struggled, beating against Liam's chest until Liam leaned in close, his voice a low rasp. "Caleb." Instantly, Caleb went still. A bitter smile touched Liam's lips. Caleb trusted him, assuming he would never hurt him. But that was the old Liam, the one who saw him every day. Once Caleb ran off with Dr. Reed, what use was there for honor and restraint? In the dim moonlight, he studied Caleb's face. The frightened, dark eyes, the full lips, the smooth skin. "You little heartbreaker," he whispered, the words a mix of accusation and despair. He told Caleb that he was done playing the gentleman. If Caleb was going to leave him, it was only fair that he collect some form of payment first. The thought echoed in his mind, a desperate justification. He shifted his grip, his fingers digging into the soft skin of Caleb's cheek, and then he crushed his mouth to his. The night was alive with the rustle of leaves. Their breath mingled, hot and frantic. Caleb's arms, surprisingly, wound softly around Liam's neck. He tried to pull back slightly, his voice a broken whisper. "Liam, don't." The sound nearly made Liam lose control. He bit his lip, his hands sliding under Caleb's shirt, finding the two small dimples at the base of his spine he'd only ever imagined touching. Caleb's body shuddered violently. His eyes were wet, his resistance melting away into a weak tremble. Behind them stood an old dogwood tree, its blossoms long gone, but a faint, sweet scent still lingered in the air. Liam stared into Caleb's eyes, then slowly leaned in, capturing a fallen petal between his lips. "Brother-in-law," he murmured, the petal a soft weight on his tongue. "You promised to help me with my lambs, remember?" Caleb's fingers tangled angrily in his hair. I will," he stammered. Liam smiled faintly and released the petal. A gentle night breeze rustled the leaves overhead. He let go of Caleb, his thumb brushing away the moisture at the corner of his mouth. The rough pad of his finger lingered on Caleb's flushed skin. This would be the last time, he thought with a pang of despair. He started to pull his hand back, but Caleb caught it. His voice was small, filled with a confusion that mirrored Liam's own. "Aren't you going to say anything?" Liam's heart stuttered. He looked at Caleb, truly looked at him, and asked what there was to say. In Caleb's mind, Liam was the steady, reliable one who would never do something so crude, so desperate. But Liam felt he had nothing left to lose. A hollow laugh escaped him. "I thought you liked it in the woods, Caleb." Caleb stared, bewildered. Then, understanding dawned as he remembered the scene with Dr. Reed before the movie. He began to explain, his voice anxious. "Liam, you heard, it's not what you think." Liam cut him off with a bitter chuckle. He assured Caleb that he didn't blame him. Everyone wanted a better life. He respected his choice. This, he explained, was just him collecting what he was owed. With that, they would be even. At his final words, all the color drained from Caleb's face. "Is that really what you think of me?" he whispered, his voice shaking. The sound was like a physical blow to Liam's chest. But the thought of the lonely future stretching before him was more painful still. "What else am I supposed to think?" Liam's voice was hard. "Go. I won't stop you." The sharp crack of a slap echoed through the trees. Liam's head snapped to the side from the force of the blow. Caleb pushed him away and fled without a backward glance. his final words a choked cry. "I hate you, Liam." For the next few days, a heavy silence hung between the two houses. In 2 more days, Caleb would be gone with Dr. Reed. Liam had no right to interfere. He threw himself into his work, harvesting the entire cornfield in a desperate, punishing burst of energy. As he was tying the last of the sheaves, Leo Vance, the younger brother of the high school teacher, found him. Leo's face was flushed from running. He explained that his brother, Julian, had been listless and depressed since Brandon's death, refusing to eat or even leave the house. He begged Liam, as Brandon's brother, to come and talk to him. Thinking of his own dead brother and the familiar ache of losing someone you love, Liam agreed. Before they left, he locked the main farmhouse. As he did, Leo reached out and brushed something from his back. Liam flinched away instinctively. Leo, his own cheeks turning pink, held up a dead mosquito between his fingertips to explain. Liam mumbled his thanks. For a moment, he considered the irony, these two brothers, both seeming to fall for his own. But he swallowed the thought. Leo was young and innocent. He didn't need to get tangled in their family's complicated grief. As he turned to get his motorcycle, he saw a small figure standing in the window of the cabin across the creek. Caleb was watching him, his brow furrowed, his mouth set in a thin, unhappy line. He really did hate him. Liam's lips twisted into a grimace. He kicked down the kickstand and told Leo it was time to go. Julian's condition was worse than he'd imagined. It took hours of patient, difficult conversation to rekindle even a tiny spark of life in the man. By the time he was done, night had fallen. Leo invited him to stay, but Liam politely declined. It was too late to drive back, so he found a cheap motel in town for the night. He lay in the unfamiliar bed, staring at the ceiling, his mind a chaotic mess. It was 2 days. In 2 days, Caleb would be gone. Suddenly, the room was illuminated by a flash of lightning, followed seconds later by a deep, rolling peal of thunder. Liam shot upright. A storm was coming, a bad one. He remembered Caleb's deep-seated fear of thunder, a childlike terror that left him paralyzed. After a moment of hesitation, he threw on his clothes. He borrowed a beat-up pickup truck from the motel owner and sped back toward Redwood Creek. Halfway there, the sky opened up. Rain fell in solid, blinding sheets. Wiping the water from his face, he pushed the old truck faster, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. Soon, the familiar stone marker at the edge of town appeared in his headlights. He drove straight to the farm. He banged on Caleb's door, shouting his name, but the thunder swallowed his voice. He let himself into his own house, then waded across the now swollen creek to the cabin. The door was unlocked. Inside, a single lump under the blankets on the bed was shaking uncontrollably. He sighed, a sound lost in the storm, and gently pulled the covers back. "Caleb, it's me. Don't be afraid." Caleb's eyes were red and swollen. "How did you get back?" he whispered. A sudden, sharp suspicion pricked at Liam. "How did you know I was gone today?" Caleb froze, his gaze sliding away. Silence filled the cabin, broken only by the drumming rain. Liam knew he shouldn't stay, but his feet felt rooted to the floor. Finally, Caleb looked at him, and Liam braced himself to be told to leave. Instead, Caleb's eyes fell to his soaked clothes. "Take them off," he said. Liam blinked, then realized he was dripping water all over the floor. He apologized for the mess. An exasperated sound came from the bed, and a towel hit him in the face. "That's not what I meant, you idiot." The towel smelled faintly of soap and Caleb. Liam breathed it in deeply before obediently peeling off his shirt. He hesitated at his jeans, then asked if he should take those off too. They were soaked through, heavy with rain. Caleb clutched the edge of the quilt, his face turned away. "Do what you want." Liam didn't hesitate. He stripped down to his boxers and began to dry himself with the soft towel. A cold draft snaked through the window, and Caleb shivered, pulling the blanket tighter. He glanced at Liam. Do you want to sit over here? Liam fought to keep his voice even, to suppress the wild leap of hope in his chest. I don't think that would be appropriate, Caleb. The words were wrong. Caleb fell silent. Sensing the shift, Liam moved toward the bed to see his face, but Caleb shoved his hand away, his voice thick with tears. Then go. Why did you even come back? Why do you keep doing this to me? He began to cry, harsh, ragged sobs that shook his whole body. Liam stood helplessly, repeating that he hadn't meant it like that. Caleb cut him off, his words tumbling out between sobs. He accused Liam of sending him mixed messages, of implying at the library that he was aiming too high with Connor, of misunderstanding him at the movie and saying such cruel things. He cried that Liam was always misjudging him, yet he was also so good to him, and the confusion was tearing him apart. Liam's mind struggled to catch up. So, you don't like them? Caleb scrubbed at his tears, glaring at him with a fierceness that was undermined by his trembling lip. Of course not. Are you stupid? If I liked them, do you think I would have let you kiss me? His voice dropped to a whisper at the last words. A fragile, unbelievable possibility began to form in Liam's mind. He explained, stumbling over the words, that at the library he had been talking about himself, not Caleb. He'd bought him the fan, only to find Connor with his hands all over him. Caleb's anger faltered. The fan? He asked softly. It's in my room, Liam said bleakly. Then, the apology came, sincere and heartfelt.
I'm sorry.
I thought you were going to leave with Dr. Reed. Caleb didn't forgive him. He just looked at him, silent, desperate. Liam sat on the edge of the bed and apologized again and again, until Caleb, overwhelmed, finally broke. Why did you kiss me? The world seemed to stop. Liam's heart hammered against his ribs. He took a deep breath and finally spoke the truth that had been living inside him for years. Because I love you, Caleb. I love you. Caleb stared at him, and fresh tears welled in his eyes, spilling down his cheeks. Liam, he choked out. Do you have any idea how long I've waited to hear you say that? A wave of guilt and regret washed over Liam. He pulled Caleb into his arms, holding him tightly, murmuring apologies into his hair. Caleb buried his face in Liam's neck, and his hot tears seemed to melt away all the pain and misunderstanding between them. After a long moment, Liam began to gently kiss his forehead, his cheeks, the corners of his lips. Caleb suddenly pulled back, his face flushed. Why did you take your pants off? The rain, Liam answered honestly. They were soaked. As if on cue, he shivered. Caleb bit his lip, then shifted over, lifting the edge of the quilt. His voice was a hesitant whisper. Do you want to get in? The shy invitation was so endearing Liam had to suppress a smile. He slid under the covers. He immediately pulled Caleb close, his lips finding his in the darkness. Soon, the last of Caleb's tears were kissed away. He tangled his fingers in Liam's hair, his voice a breath against his skin. Liam, I love you too. Liam froze. Before he could process the words, Caleb moved, shifting until he was on top of him, reversing their positions. It was a clear, unambiguous answer, a demonstration of his feelings. His voice was impossibly small. Can I bite you? A low sound rumbled in Liam's throat. Yes, you can do anything you want. Outside, the wind howled, but inside the small cabin, it was warm. Liam carefully tucked the quilt around them, sealing them in their own private world. Tonight, there would be no drafts. Tonight, Caleb would not get sick. The sound of the rain was a lullaby, and they slept. The next morning, as Liam returned from his chores carrying buckets of fresh water, he heard a familiar voice coming from Caleb's porch. Connor Shaw was there, stuffing his face with a pastry. He was complaining that his dad had practically locked him in his room to keep him from skipping out on the arranged date. He stood up, telling Caleb he was heading back to his college town for good this time, and asked one last time if Caleb wanted to come see the city. Liam's jaw tightened. Another one trying to lure him away. But Caleb's voice was gentle and firm. He apologized, stating that he had no plans to leave Redwood Creek. Connor tried to argue, but just then, the cabin door swung open. Liam and Caleb's eyes met. Caleb's expression was calm, as if he'd known Liam was listening. He told Connor it was getting late and he should head back to school. Seeing Liam standing there like a thundercloud, Connor's bravado vanished. He mumbled his goodbyes and left. Without a word, Liam began splitting firewood, the axe rising and falling with a vengeful rhythm. Caleb came and stood beside him, a soft smile on his face. "Don't be jealous," he murmured. "I'm going to be with you forever." He tilted his head, his wide, sincere eyes reflecting Liam's own image. The corner of Liam's mouth ticked upward. "Yeah," he said. "I believe you." They had just finished lunch when another visitor appeared. Dr. Reed stood in the yard with Caleb, their voices carrying on the still afternoon air. He was leaving for a new practice up north, he said. He asked one last time if Caleb was sure he didn't want to come. Caleb shook his head and wished him well. Dr. Reed glanced at Liam, who was watching from the porch, then gave Caleb a wry, resigned smile. He respected his choice, he said, and with a final, gentlemanly farewell, he was gone. Liam let out a long breath, a cold smile on his face. He'd finally sent both rivals packing. He walked over to Caleb and wrapped an arm around his waist. "Do you want to go to the city?" he asked, his voice serious. Caleb, thinking he was still jealous, started to reassure him, but Liam's expression was intent. He said that Caleb had been raised for a life of comfort, and he didn't want him to suffer a hard life on the farm. "I want to give you a better life, Caleb." Caleb stared at him for a long moment, then laced his fingers through Liam's. "Where you go, I go." A brilliant smile broke across Liam's face. "Then let's go." Caleb looked stunned. "Now?" Liam confirmed it. The bags were already packed. The harvest was sold. The farmhouse was repaired and secured. "Caleb," he said, his eyes shining, "let's run away together." Tears welled in Caleb's eyes, his lashes sparkling in the sunlight. He gave Liam the same sweet, devastating smile he had on the day they first met. "Okay," he said, "let's run away." They made a life in the city. Liam reconnected with an old college roommate and joined his tech startup, working with a relentless drive. With their savings, they rented a small apartment and bought a used car. He held Caleb close at night, promising him that one day he would buy him a big house, a brand new car, everything he deserved. Caleb never complained. He only worried that Liam worked too hard. He got a job of his own, discovering a surprising aptitude for foreign languages. Within a few years, Liam had founded his own successful company, and Caleb had risen to a management position at an international trade firm. 5 years after leaving Redwood Creek, Liam made good on his promise. He bought a sprawling house in the suburbs and a new car for Caleb. That night, celebrating, he had too much champagne and fell down the stairs, breaking his leg. In the stark, white hospital room, Caleb was silent, his face grim. Liam lay in bed, almost afraid to breathe. Finally, Caleb spoke. "Liam, let's go home." He explained that while they had gained everything they'd ever wanted, they had lost time with each other. Liam understood immediately. He took Caleb's hand. "Okay, where you go, I go." They returned to Redwood Creek. They used their money to pave the roads, renovate the library, and start a scholarship fund for the town's children. They knocked down the wall between the farmhouse and the cabin, creating one large, beautiful home. One sunny afternoon, Liam was sitting in the yard, enjoying the quiet, watching the way the light caught in Caleb's hair. He was overwhelmed with a profound sense of peace. Just as he was about to speak, the tranquility was shattered. Connor Shaw kicked open their new gate, a basket of fruit in his hands, announcing their arrival. Behind him was Dr. Miles Reed. "Caleb," Connor yelled. "We came to visit." Dr. Reed smiled. "It's been a long time." Caleb stood to greet them. Liam gritted his teeth, a flicker of old jealousy stirring. But this was different. This wasn't the past. He stood up, pushed both men aside, and wrapped his arms tightly around Caleb from behind, burying his face in his neck. He glared at their uninvited guests. "What are you looking at?" he declared, his voice a possessive growl. "He's my husband."